Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. And welcome to one more episode of Reviews Without Remorse. I am Joe, your podcast pal, and with me as always is my partner in crime, David. What's going on, brother?
What up, my man?
On today's episode, something going on in the world of the Green Lantern. They're going to get moving on the Green Lantern movie finally in the DC universe. Another trailer hit the internet this week that a lot of people have been really kind of excited about. We will discuss. And then our main topic, of course, is the one and only Spider-Man 3.
The wonderful,
Dave and I will discuss.
the talented, the amazing Spider-Man 3.
We will discuss at great length. But speaking of Spider-Man, the Homecoming, couple advanced screenings. I am trying to avoid the spoilers, but I am hearing it's getting good buzz. I'll just say that. It's going to be out this Friday. Dave and I will definitely be checking it out this weekend, and next week we're going to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, it's getting good buzz. I'm happy.
I am looking forward to it. But I'm being cautiously optimistic because you know what? At some point, Marvel's going to do Cars 2.
In brightest day,
in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
The Green Lantern, finally. We're gonna revisit the Green Lantern. Tell me about it. I don't know much about what they're doing, but I know it's coming.
All right. Basically, we had the ill-fated Ryan Reynolds version. Came out, gosh, I don't even remember when that was. Was that 2011? 2011, yes. Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. It wasn't the worst superhero movie of all time, but it wasn't good.
Please don't make the super suit green. Or animate it.
They really tried to Robert Downey Jr., the character of Hal Jordan, and it was painfully obvious, and it didn't really work, even though Ryan Reynolds, I'll give him credit, he was relatively enjoyable in it, and that whole thing with the suit being CGI, that just seemed kind of frivolous. Seemed like a bullet point in the production more than an actual good choice for the movie. But it was announced. It was announced that the Green Lantern Corps, which is, I guess, going to tell the story of the entire Corps as opposed to just one, and in fact is because it's supposed to feature both Hal Jordan and John Stewart as the characters. So Hal Jordan being the original, John Stewart being the one that most people might know from the Justice League cartoon from the 90s. And it's being directed by Robert Wyatt, whose biggest claim to fame so far has been the first Planet of the Apes movie, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. That got taken over by Matt Reeves for the sequels. He was supposed to do he was supposed to do the Gambit movie with Channing Tatum. That was his last thing that he was supposed to do, but that never came about. I gotta be honest with you. I mean, I'm reporting this because it is technically news, but I have very little excitement about this. You know, the fact that they're going with both John Stewart and Hal Jordan at the same time feels kind of dicey. They both of those characters have a very rich history in comic books, and I don't feel very confident that this is going to turn out Wonder Woman style. This feels more like Batman v Superman style.
Okay. I don't know a lot about that character, so I can't really comment. Maybe they'll do something where Hal Jordan is the 90% of the movie, and then 10% is the other guy as just sort of more of a wink than actual just the two of them together.
I hope so. The character deserves to have his day in court, because his first day in court wasn't like, it was faithful. Granted, it was faithful, but it was just not good. Maybe it was almost too faithful. I don't know. But whatever the case may be, it wasn't a good adaptation, and he deserves better. The Green Lantern character has a very rich history. They are the original Guardians of the Galaxy. So you would think they would be an easy thing to come about. You know, each lantern has its own sector. Hal Jordan takes care of the sector that happens to encompass Earth. The rings are activated by willpower. So green is will, and yellow is fear. And as time went on, they actually had this giant war of rings with different rings that reacted that were powered by anger and hope and love and all that other stuff. And, a relatively compelling story that could make a great flick if under a good director. Now, Rupert Wyatt proved himself to me, at least, with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, because when I first heard of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I had no interest, and that movie turned me around. I was like, okay, you know what? Not bad. That's pretty good. And then they've spawned the 2 sequels, including the one coming out now, but he had nothing to do with it. I don't know why the heck he had nothing to do with it, but his career is basically that and the Exorcist TV show, which I didn't even realize there was an Exorcist TV show. Did you know there was an Exorcist TV show?
No, I did not.
Well, it seems he had a hand in that. Something called The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg, and that's about it. So, I mean, here's hoping. It'd be nice if they get the Green Lanterns correctly, and they fit very easily into the universe. I mean, they've already that opening Marvel-esque opening that they did for Wonder Woman showed the Green Lantern in it, so they obviously want him to be part of the universe.
Right. Yeah. No, I did notice that. I did hear that too. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like the DCU now, I kind of feel like if you asked me just 2 months ago, I would have said anything from DC is a guarantee flop. It's gonna be terrible. And I mean, everything the Justice League was still shaping up to look awful. Now I feel like they have a shot. I kind of feel like they got one right in spite of themselves. Zack Snyder is out and Joss Whedon is in. And again, we mentioned last week, they're not just re-editing. They build sets. They're doing reshoots. So yeah, it's now I'm sort of at the point where it could go either way. So I have mild high hopes for a decent Green Lantern movie.
Yeah, but
put it that way.
One good movie should not suddenly give you a lot of confidence in the product.
I did not say a lot of confidence. Did not say a lot of confidence. Trust me. No, you're right. One good movie, it could be a fluke, but again, put it this way. Logic tells me that if they get it right once, they say, okay, well, what did we do here? And let's try to do a little more of that and a little less of the other one.
True, but as we've always said, Hollywood learns the wrong lessons from movies.
Hello? Mr. Hennessy, he's here again.
That's 5 days in a row now. What does he want?
His daughter was killed in the bombing.
Mr. Hennessy, please find out the names of the bombers.
I work for the government, not terrorists.
You used to work for them.
I don't know who the bombers are.
I don't believe in you.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm not going to say too much about it because I just saw this trailer today and it looks pretty damn good. I don't know a lot. Well, I know 3 things about it. I know Jackie Chan is in it. I know Pierce Brosnan is in it. And I know that it's directed by the same guy who directed Casino Royale and GoldenEye, Martin Campbell. Mm-hmm. And the trailer looks damn good. It looks phenomenal, actually. I'm saying to myself, wow, this is one of those where you see this, you say, don't get your hopes up too high. It can go either way. But from what I'm seeing, wow, it looks good.
As I was watching it, the first thing I said to myself was, here are 2 actors who have parts that are completely against their normal type. Okay, this is Jackie Chan. This is not the way you've seen Jackie Chan before. Right. Not in any way. Okay, this is a somber man. He's not like a screwy guy or anything like that. This is a somber, serious man who's on a very, very serious mission. Yeah. And I think the thing. All right. The thing with me that got me as I was watching the trailer, and I was enjoying the trailer, but there's this one point that just kind of floored me. Do you remember the TV series Batman Beyond?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Batman Beyond was about Batman in the future. Basically, Bruce Wayne had managed to make his retirement, and in the future, somebody else took his place. In the pilot episode of Batman Beyond, it showed Batman probably like maybe his late 40s, early 50s or something like that, going on one last mission. And he gets in over his head, and he starts getting beaten on by the bad guys, and in desperation, he sees a gun laying on the ground, and he picks it up and points it at the bad guy, and the bad guy freaks out and he runs, and he looks at the gun, and he just takes the mask off and says, never again. And that was, when I watched that the first time years ago, and he picked up that gun, I like, like, he picked up a gun, and that's the big thing with Batman at the time. He would never, ever touch a gun. Jackie Chan is the same way. His characters, he uses guns like, I'm a cop, so here's a gun, but you never see him really pull the trigger. And he's always said that he doesn't like using guns as a prop for it. He pulled a trigger and fired it at somebody in this damn trailer.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was just like, what?
Yeah, I totally hear you, too, because, it's funny, because Jackie Chan has been from the beginning. Like, I remember seeing Jackie Chan movies before he even came to the United States, and he was like just like the action god that he was.
And still is.
Yeah, and when Jackie Chan got to America, I saw all his movies in the beginning. I remember Rumble in the Bronx. I saw it in the theater, and I saw a couple. And he always did schlocky, fun stuff. And I remember saying, like, if somebody put him in a good movie, in a really good movie, that would be something else. When I saw this, I was like, there it is. That's Jackie Chan in a serious, hardcore movie. I mean, this to me had like a Taken vibe to it. And I thought, wow, this really could really go someplace. And again, playing off Pierce Brosnan, I thought, wow, this could be something.
Yeah, who also was going against type. There was Pierce Brosnan, no matter what role he's played, even when he's played bad guys, there was always like a charm to him. But even from the minute he first showed up in the trailer, I was like, ooh, there's just something not right about him. And as the trailer progressed, you just kind of felt this unease with his character. I don't know if he's a good guy, bad guy, or whatever it was, but it was so against what Pierce is normally playing and that's what just appealed to me with this movie. That immediately, here are two actors that have their stereotype that they fit into as characters, and they're both playing completely against that type. And right away, that interests me.
Yeah. I totally agree. This really looked very interesting, and again, there's a competent director at the helm, not a perfect director, but a very competent one in my opinion. So yeah, this could be something.
Oh, I hope it is something. I have no idea when it's coming out because I wound up stopping watching the trailer because I felt like, you know what? I feel like
that's so funny you say that because I did the same thing. I literally stopped it. I think probably about 2/3, and I said, you know what? Let me just stop it here. I had the same idea. I said, let this be a surprise.
When I saw him fire the gun, that was it. I was like, okay, I don't want to know anymore. I feel like I just ruined something right there.
Yeah, and it's fine. And again, because we've been so burned by trailers lately, giving us too much. I'm like, I'd like this one to be a nice little surprise.
Yeah, agreed. And I hope it is. Give me a second. I'm gonna do a quick IMDb to see if there's any release dates or anything like that. Well, this one says 2003, so that's here it is, October 13th, 2017. And it's written by it's based on a novel actually. It's based on a novel by Stephen Leather called The Chinaman, which is, I guess that's why they're not calling it The Chinaman. It's being written by David Marconi, and that's all I'm going to say right now. Well, we may have a tiny problem. Mr. Marconi did write Live Free or Die Hard, which isn't a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah. And he also wrote Enemy of the State, which was not a bad flick. So yeah, we're both very excited by that. When I saw that, I was like, I stopped it and I immediately sent it to you too. That was
Well, and I actually had when you sent it, I had already seen it. I didn't want to. I didn't even have time to even mention it to you at the time. I was juggling a couple things. But yeah, no, I had just seen it before that. And I think you and I must have saw it at the same time and had the same reaction. All right. So.
Well, let's get on with it then.
I'm going to ask MJ to marry me.
A man has to put his wife before himself. Can you do that, Peter?
Yeah. I think I can.
We have some new information. This is your uncle's actual killer. We lost his trail 2 days ago.
Spider-Man 3. The infamous Spider-Man 3. Where to begin here?
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Joe has 2 pages of notes. I did.
This is honestly, I've never taken as many notes for a movie before ever. Of all the things we've done so far, this is by far the most notes that I've taken, and it just felt like every 5 minutes, like something would happen that just stuck out. That stuck out and said, okay, that's by far the most notes I've ever taken.
I basically did a stream of consciousness notes because it was annoying me. It'd be like, I started out with, oh look, the movie's 2 hours and 19 minutes, yay, all the way up to slowest falling ring ever, which we'll get to.
Right. So all right, so are we gonna do our usual tell me what you don't like about it, or are we gonna start off the other way around? It's hard, isn't it?
I'm gonna have to go with, let's start with what I liked. Thomas Hayden Church was not a bad Flint Marko.
Agreed. Very strongly agreed. I had that on my notes too. I thought the casting there was really good.
Yeah, and the opening fight between Peter and the new Goblin was actually pretty good.
Oh, I disagree with that. I kind of felt like they were probably trying to do some new things and to make a really kinetic action scene. Like, there's a lot of long takes where, they're moving around, flying around, and the camera doesn't cut.
Right, which I love.
Honestly, I kind of, I like the idea of it. I don't think the final product was very good because I felt like you were very conscious of green screens and composites. And, I mean, honestly, it started to feel more like the Spider-Man ride at Universal Studios. I thought it kind of took me out of the mood, really.
Okay, and then, and if I may follow this up just slightly to give you a little context into my meaning behind it.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to think about the rest of the action scenes in that flick. When you compare the two, the first one seems like genius.
It's got more energy, that's for damn sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
There was not only more energy, but there was more character meaning for it than anything else in the entire flick. Everything else just felt like it was just soulless, lifeless.
Yeah. Well, I think parts of it was, and yeah, I mean, put it this way, the long takes that they did where Harry's flying around, zipping around, and kind of like narrow between the alleys, and again, now the glider looks more like a snowboard instead of the other one.
That's another note I have, but we'll get to that in a second. Go on.
Yeah. I do get what you mean. I like the idea. I like the ring falling and Harry kind of coming up, and now this is the big fight. He's not even in his Spider-Man outfit. I like the idea of it, but I just thought the execution kind of failed on certain levels.
All right, well, that I'll happily, I can't. I'm not saying it's the best action scene in all of Spiderdom, but in the context of this movie, I felt like it was the best action scene. And
I mean, as opposed to later when Mary Jane is again stuck up in the top and he's going to rescue her, and I mean, yeah, that was weak. The first fight with the Sandman, action-wise, I thought was okay. There's a lot of other problems I have with it, but just as a straight action scene was okay. I thought that one worked decent, and maybe better than the first one. It was a little more, I mean, I felt like this one felt more grounded. The other one felt like I said, it felt like a theme park ride, and I had a hard time sort of getting into it.
Well, technically speaking, you're right. The other one was on the ground, whereas this one was up in the sky.
There you go. It's a little literal there, but yeah, you're right.
Probably not what you're...
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's talk about this other thing. The ring taking forever to fall. That was a little... and noticeably, as far as I'm concerned. That ring, he drops the ring, they pound each other for a good, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 seconds. There's no way that ring is still flying in the air. No way.
Yeah.
So let's...
Well, not only that, but I kind of felt like, boy, that was kind of Attack of the Clones-ish. It's going to fall. I mean, I liked how he kind of lost track of it, and then when it was gone, you thought it was gone, yeah. And then you're right. Then 20 minutes later, he goes and it's still falling, and he still finds it. No, I'm not really buying that one.
Definitely not one of the finest moments for me. The other problem I have with that scene, and this is huge to me as far as I'm concerned. When has it been established that Harry has mechanical abilities? Because they do this pan just before the fight. It's panning across. You see the Goblin mask, a refined Goblin mask, and finally that freaking paintball mask that he winds up going with, and then it glides over to the original glider and this new, as you said, snowboard style. Right? Who did that for him?
Right.
It wasn't Bernard.
No, sure wasn't. That was kind of a glossed over part, was, all of a sudden the movie opens, in the first 10 minutes or so, Harry is stepping out of the Green Goblin tank. He turns himself into the Green Goblin. Now he's got the powers that his father had.
Right.
And you're right, and everything that goes with it. He's got the explosives and the glider. I mean, you saw the original Green Goblin practicing on the glider. Here, I mean, in fact, maybe that was sort of their little wink. oh look, it's a snowboard this time around, and I'm sure Harry snowboards, so maybe that's how he knows how to fly.
Okay,
I don't know.
Maybe.
You're right. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense that he's able to build that type of technology, that type of high-tech technology. I mean, even if you walk into the room, and they showed it at the end of Spider-Man 2, he walks into the room, there's the technology. Okay, some people will say, well, he reverse engineered it. Okay, but he's never... In fact, there's a line later in the movie where he specifically says how Peter helped him in science. That's not...
right.
So that's not somebody who's going to reverse engineer anything. And then the next argument is, well, he became the Goblin and it enhanced his intelligence. It's like, no, that's not true either. Because the Goblin formula he only took at the end of that scene where they showed that he had already built all that stuff. And even so, it never showed that it increased intelligence, just physical attributes, not mental.
Right.
That's a huge hole for me.
Yeah. Of many in this film, yeah, I know, I agree with you. I agree. For something that had 3 films to work itself up to, because, I mean, and now I'm kind of backing up and we're talking about the bigger problems with this film, because it's so bloated, because they're trying to jam so many elements into this film, what you end up with doesn't get fleshed out.
Right.
So, and again, you had 3 films to get Harry into the Hobgoblin suit, and that doesn't work because, again, they've cut it short.
In many respects, yeah. So that didn't work for me. Another scene, I mean, shortly before that as well, and right after we first see that Harry has done that, the meteorite, okay? The meteorite. Right?
Yeah.
There's this wonderful romantic moment. MJ has just had her first night on Broadway, and they're sitting in a web because, of course, that's what Spider-Man and Spider-Man's girlfriend does. And out of the sky falls this meteorite. It hits the ground, and know why? It hits the ground in such a dull, like, almost like a fart. It landed
right.
like... It literally landed, and when it shouldn't have been, ba-boom, and many deaths. It's meteorite, even a baseball-sized meteorite, has enough kinetic energy to cause a huge explosion. And for somebody who's so slavishly devoted to the fact that the character is, a scientist, that's kind of a big misstep as far as I'm concerned. Although, I have a theory. My theory is he came down with the sound of a fart as Raimi's subtle way of showing disdain for the Venom character.
Yeah, there's that, and that is certainly a factor in this film. I'll even throw another one out. The symbiote we assume is an intelligent being,
mm-hmm.
or a creature with some level of intelligence. It could be steering the ship. Kinda. I mean, it's.
But it was
a
rock. It was a rock.
Well, it is a rock, but it also could be a little tiny spaceship that is sort of like now covered with debris and looks like a rock. And look, I'm reaching at a straw here. I understand that, but I'm just saying.
Who are you?
Well, okay, all right. Then why is the symbiote riding around on a meteorite?
I mean, if you want, who was first, God or man? I mean. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't care about, it's kind of ridiculous to begin with to be introducing the symbiote in such a way. And I'll actually get to that.
Right.
I'll actually get to that later with my own thoughts on that. But, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just felt like, no rhyme or reason. Here comes the symbiote. And oh, by the way, he's going to break all the laws of like what we know about the nature of meteorites and stuff like that and just land with a fart.
Like I said, I mean, that's the only thing I got for you for that one. I mean, again, and we've talked about it before, you can't do Venom. I mean, that's why I said before, I mean, you can't, how are you going to do Venom? Because everything about Venom has to do with outer space and alien technology and alien creatures, something that this humble Spider-Man franchise did not go near. So, I mean, if I'm Sam Raimi and they're forcing me to put Venom in here, I don't know how you do it without spending a ton of time with backstory. That meteorite's all you get. You're right. I mean, it has to be quiet. It has to just sort of show up on Peter's back. There you go. I put it this way. Yeah, it's a bad move, and I don't envy Sam Raimi trying to figure out another way to get this stupid thing in there.
Believe me, Sam Raimi has my sympathy. We know the stories of how basically Venom was forced upon him. That's like well known throughout Hollywood. So in a weird way, it's almost like he's acting like a petulant child about it, as opposed to
yes. You know what? Yeah, I've had that thought myself, and you know, I've sort of gone down the same road with this film. Do I sympathize with Sam Raimi and say, you know, this poor guy was stuck with it, this is the best he could do, or maybe I shouldn't be so forgiving and say, hey, Sam Raimi, be a professional. You have a you get this character foisted on you. I understand that. Not your favorite character, but you could do whatever you want with it. So that was the thing with Venom as far as I was concerned. I always felt like you could do anything you please with this character. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, it's not like Eddie Brock was so well known and had such strong characteristics that you had to sort of do that character exactly right. You could have sort of sculpted Eddie Brock to be what you want. If the symbiote, it just lands in the backyard and it shows up, and now you got Eddie Brock, whatever you shaped him to be, intensified, evil. I mean, they could have done. I always felt like there was sort of a blank slate that sort of comes with Venom. As long as you get rid of the origin stuff. Again, we're not going to the planet where it came from. If you just start out with the symbiote, you had a blank slate there. You got just evil Spider-Man, evil looking version of Spider-Man, and you could have crafted that however you wanted to.
Yeah.
So I don't really know why he decided to piss the rug with this.
Revenge is like a poison. It can take us over. And before you know it can turn you into something ugly.
This suit. Where'd this come from? The power. Feels good.
Let's talk. Let's talk about Topher Grace for a second, okay?
Yes. Let's talk about him.
As the Brock presented in this movie, he wasn't terrible. As the Brock presented in this movie, he wasn't terrible because he came across as that little sleazy slime ball, blah 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 blah. So I'm not complaining too much about the way he played it. I could see what they were trying to do. This is a situation where you have a decent actor who took what they gave him and ran with it. And ran it right into a brick wall, but he ran with it. His introduction is the most awkward bit of backstory I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like...
incredibly awkward.
It's like, oh, hi. Yes, I'm a photographer. Hi, I'm Eddie Brock. Nice to meet you, Mr. George Stacy. Oh, by the way, I'm dating your daughter.
Yeah, the one that is now dangling for her life and about to die. Let's just have a little conversation. Let's not get excited. Let's not get worked up. Hi, I'm dating your daughter. You know the one screaming 30 stories up? Her, yeah. Oh my God, was that the weirdest thing ever?
I put a note that basically said, it's like they saw the cringy moments in Spider-Man 2 and said, we need more of that. And took it up to 11.
Yeah, it really is. It is. It's funny, I felt the same way, and I felt like sometimes when I see this movie, there's a part of me that wonders if I'm giving too much credit to the other ones. Because, there's a scene in here. I mean, obviously we'll get to the scene that everybody talks about, and I have thoughts on that. But even before that, when Mary Jane goes over to Harry's place and they start cooking, and he plays the twist, right?
And they start twisting.
And then they start doing the twist. They start doing the twist dancing, and I'm like, it was kind of at that moment where I said to myself, maybe Sam Raimi just has really nerdy taste in music. Like in the second one he does Raindrops Are Falling on My Head, which is sort of just kind of like when you saw that in the second one, you were kind of like, all right, okay, sure, and you just let it go and you ran with it and you enjoyed it. Okay, fine. Then when this one comes along, they do the twist before, and you're already kind of going like, these are teenagers, early 20s-ish age people. Why would they be doing the twist? That seemed a little goofy to me. And then, of course, later, when you get the jazz scenes, which I'll hold for a little bit. But again, now right then I'm saying to myself, maybe Raimi is just kind of a big, awkward nerd and just kind of has, weird taste in music.
Your shots are so good.
I'd love to shoot you sometime.
Peter Parker. Peter.
Parker! Miss Brent? That's not the position I hired you for.
Why don't we talk about the scene as long as we're here? Let's kind of tackle the elephant in the room first, and then we can kind of get a little more nuanced.
I can never listen to that song again.
Is that an actual song? Yeah, I guess it is.
It has a very James Brown vibe, so I'm assuming it's probably something, I don't know.
Probably, yeah. Remember when you were talking about Suicide Squad, and you said after a couple of viewings, you found it more and more frustrating because you felt that there was a good movie in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I see Spider-Man 3. I really feel like there was a good movie in here to be made.
Yep.
And
I agree.
It's not that this film is totally unwatchable like a lot of them. There are good things in it. And it's probably, I'll even go as far as to say the foundation of this movie is good and it's solid. But yes, there are just way too many terrible things that got thrown in to ever give it like a positive rating, I think.
Yeah.
The stuff when Peter turns bad. Now, this I find it's frustrating because when he first puts the suit on, when he first starts to get aggressive, I found all of that to be very believable. I thought that his frustration seemed believable. When he was lashing out, I found it to be almost justified. Like, get off my back, you and you. So I was sort of on board with it. And I'll even go as far as to say the stuff with him and Mary Jane, man-woman Mars-Venus problems that they have, I found the dialogue there to be kind of believable. I thought they did okay with that, believe it or not. Now, do I want this in a Spider-Man movie? Not necessarily. This is not where I think we need to go. But I thought that the dialogue there was okay. So again, now, when he puts the black suit on and he starts to get aggressive, so far I'm on board. And I really didn't find anything wrong with it until that stupid, dancey, jazzy, him doing Saturday Night Fever down the street or whatever the hell he was supposed to be doing, that's when it all turned to garbage. But I thought up until then it was okay. And I've heard a defense of this, and I wanted to sort of throw this out, and I can't take credit for it. I've heard it said that, look, the symbiote doesn't turn Peter cool. It just turns him into a jerk. So this representation isn't supposed to be cool. It's not supposed to be, wow, Peter's really cool. No, he's supposed to be awkward and dorky. It's Peter's idea of what's cool, not the symbiote's idea of what's cool. And Peter's is still a nerd deep down. So it's like his idea of what he thinks cool looks like.
No, but you know what? That's not only a great theory, but I agree with it. And I think it's very, very solid. But I think there were better ways of presenting it. That was near shark jumping territory. That was almost derailing the movie territory.
Right. I agree. Right. And even if I agree with that theory, and I do to an extent, because again, Peter's walking down the street. See, here's what's funny too. Like, when he first starts doing that stuff, he gets his black clothes and he's got the emo hair now, and he's bopping down the street making these doofy finger gestures and faces. The girls are looking at him like, Jesus, what a goober.
Yeah.
like they're not looking at him like, ooh, you hunky guy. So even then, I could still buy the theory, but then later, it's like when he actually goes to the jazz club with Gwen Stacy and he does the dance number, like he starts playing the piano and then he starts dancing. The bigger problem is that now the camera starts to cut along with his dance like it's choreography.
Right.
Like now the movie is playing along with what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, and it even does the close up when he does the, now dig on this.
Oh my God.
Is like the most god-awful line in movie history, probably.
Dude, hold on. I gotta stop you for a second. I'm sorry to get you in the middle of your thought, but this is what I wrote. Now dig on this. I squeezed my phone so hard at that cringe, I broke part of the hard shell cover. No lie. No lie.
I believe it, because again, that's the moment where you feel like the movie is playing along with us now. Now suddenly it's not Peter just being a goofball and a nerd or whatever.
Yeah.
The movie plays along. So you can't distance yourself from it and say, hey, well, this was just Peter being... No, you gave us this like this was supposed to be cool. Like this was like a full-blown dance number.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, that's where it really just sort of goes off the tracks, and it's like, ugh. So, yeah, and even, like I said, even if I agree with the theory that this is just Peter's idea of, and he would still be, yeah, that's fine. Does not make for good cinema.
No.
Does not make for a good film in any way, shape, or form, especially something that's supposed to be a Spider-Man film. I mean, you could show me Peter getting aggressive. I mean, even Superman 3 does this better.
You always wanted to fly, Kent. Now's your chance.
It was better cinema than this. Than a jazz club and him dancing on chairs and acting like a goofball. I mean, it was just awful. I mean, again, the most cringeworthy scene in any film, I think.
Easily. But the thing is his character was taking a turn for the narcissist even before the symbiote showed up. And that's what really annoyed me.
Yeah, no, you're right. Before he started wearing the suit, I picked up on that too. He was starting to, and again, it was just funny because we just had in Spider-Man 2, they gave us Peter who was having a tough time, and the way he coped with having a tough time was by him basically losing his powers.
Yeah, shutting his powers down, so to speak.
Yeah. Here, now, he's still got his powers. He's still having maybe even a worse time because now Mary Jane's dumping him or they're just having lots of problems. You'd think he'd be a little more down the dumps this time around, but he's not, and now he's just acting like a jerk. So you're right. That was they were changing his character because this happened before he put the suit on. Mm-hmm. And here's a random thought. Why, when he decides to take the suit off, does he have to go to the church and do the routine with the church bells? Because up until that point, he'd been taking the costume on and off. In fact, it was weird because once the symbiote climbs onto him and forms the costume, it seemed like the symbiote never changed back. Like, Peter could now take off that black costume, put it in the trunk, leave it in the closet, and when he needed it, he took it out and put it back on again. Mm-hmm. So I almost don't even really understand how or why because again, there is the scene with him and Doc Connors. He shows him the thing, but I'm watching this film saying, like, well, how does Peter even know that this is a symbiote? How does he not? As far as he knows, it's just a black outfit that he just woke up wearing one night. I almost didn't quite get it.
They
but again, he'd been taking it off and on.
Yeah,
what's that?
They didn't demonstrate his reasons for even bringing, because he fell asleep. He woke up and like, what's crawling on me? And look, I've got a black suit now. What is this all about? And they didn't really demonstrate well enough that he realized that something living was possessing his suit. Oh, by the way, slight interlude. The black costume did look badass.
Well, it's funny. I have a mixed thought about that too. Pretty much everything in this movie I got mixed feelings on.
Spider-Man 3, the mixed thoughts.
I liked it. Well, actually, let me start this way. On one hand, I was disappointed because that black outfit in the comics was very different. There was that big white spider in the front that sort of wrapped around the back. By just doing the same old costume just in black here, I thought it was a missed opportunity, frankly. And given what Venom becomes later, you probably could have taken advantage of that and said that this thing is kind of redesigned how it wants or something or other. On the other hand, I do say to myself, okay, the symbiote just climbs on top and basically just sort of covers the existing outfit in black. And I in my mind, I'm saying to myself, I guess that's probably what it would do. I mean, the symbiote is not a costume designer either. So maybe that's why. But again, when it goes on Venom, it makes the creepy, scary face. So why not let it make the different costume this time? Like I said, missed opportunity. You could have had like if you're going to change things up, change it up. Show us a different costume for a little while, and then he goes back to his old way. But I want to go back. You were talking about Topher Grace, and as long as we're going to talk about Venom / Topher Grace, I hate Topher Grace in this movie. I think it was awful. We used to talk about like always pulling the mask off. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like there is hardly any really good money shots of Venom in this film. You don't really get any good looks at him. Eddie Brock gets the costume, and he doesn't even get it until an hour and 45 minutes into the movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Which I thought is really kind of crazy. Like, it's almost the ending. He just shows up for the finale. But there's no good shots of Venom. You'd think, like, you'd have tons of shots of him with the big smile and the big evil face. There's not a lot. And every time he would show up and every time he's talking to Peter Parker, the thing unravels and there's goober looking Topher Grace. Topher Grace to me looks like he's perpetually in puberty. and every time he spoke, it's like, I'm thinking humiliation. Yeah. Like he's got this really annoying voice. I'm like, shut up.
That was the weakness. The problem was, I think they cast him as Brock, and I think as the character of Brock presented in this movie, that was fine, because he came across as a slime ball, and, an opportunistic, and I was okay with that. It's when he became Venom, it's like, you're not Venom. You are nowhere near Venom. Like,
right.
Okay, fine. You bulked up a little bit to give yourself a little bit of, like, how, you were not menacing in the slightest bit. A part of me was like, no. Why don't you just keep the goddamn mask? Just keep it on. Much more intimidating that way.
Totally. I mean, frankly, yeah, once the costume is on, and here's the thing, I always thought that basically that big creepy smile that Venom has, I thought it took him over so much that it legitimately like twisted his body and his face into this like hideous smile.
Right.
So the idea that the thing is going to unravel back and his regular face with these weak little fangs, like he looks so stupid with the fangs in his mouth.
Fangs. Oh my God, I think I made a note about
so
that too.
Dumb. Oh, he just looks so stupid. That's what I mean. Like he looks like a goober is in puberty. But so when every time the mask would go back and there he is with his normal face, I was like, no.
You're
Why
killing
would
the
why the
character.
mouth?
You killed the character that
just
way.
Completely. It made no sense. I just find that Topher Grace, the actor, has no presence whatsoever. Like I just do not. I've never seen him in anything that was interesting.
Ocean's 11. There's a good Topher Grace movie.
right. Because he's. There you go. Perfect. Because he's playing himself. Yeah, playing himself as a goober, which is exactly how I see him. There you go. So okay. So that Venom. Let's talk about Sandman for a second.
All right, Sandman. Sandman a little better, but oh boy, Sam Raimi. I get the feeling sometimes he likes the villains more than Spider-Man.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it is a we are sort of falling into. Remember when you had the Michael Keaton Batman and you had Nicholson as the Joker, and he was such a great Joker that by the time they got around to the second one, they felt like they needed to have two villains instead of just one. You're getting into that territory here. I agree with you. You're kind of getting to where, look, we explored Spider-Man in the first one. We gave him a good villain in the second one. Now we're just going to have to double down and do a couple villains. And it's weird, too, because, again, you got so many villains that were sort of in the wings by this time that you might as well have just gone. I mean, seriously, not only do you have Harry, 3 films leading up to Harry as the Hobgoblin, okay? But you also got Dr. Connors, by the way, who's been in there for 2 films already, and we're kind of waiting for him to become the Lizard.
Which, from what I understand, they originally wanted to do. They wanted to make it the Lizard and Sandman.
Which actually probably would have worked pretty well.
Yeah.
And the Sandman, I thought, it's kind of funny. Again, everything with this review is going to be a lot of mixed feelings. I remember thinking that the Sandman was a tough villain to do, but I thought they pulled it off pretty well because, again, the graphics were pretty good. The origin of the Sandman, that scene was pretty well done.
Except for the logic, but we'll get to that.
Well, I mean, yeah, I do. It's funny. They're doing this experiment where they're shooting sand with rays, and I'm saying to myself, what was the point of this experiment? Like, if he wasn't there, what was that sand supposed to do?
They were ionizing it somehow, but my thing was it's probably a bird. It's like, but they just established that they just closed the windows. Why not just open the windows and take a peek? Just saying.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and seriously, if it was a bird, then you would have had Bird Sandman, which probably wouldn't have been a good idea either. So,
Sandbird,
seriously. So yeah, and again, I got to go back and forth with that, and then plus the idea that he can make himself into a massive sand monster. I kind of got where they were getting that from, I think. Because, like, the first time that happens, he's in the truck with the sand.
Right.
So he just, all that sand sort of becomes him. And then the end happens at a construction site, which I guess there's big piles of sand there, too. Okay. You know what always cracks me up, though? First of all, when he shows up as just this sandstorm, right? He shows up right in the middle of Spider-Man's big party, the big celebration. Yeah, the big sandstorm comes swooping in, and then Spider-Man goes swinging after it. Now I'm thinking to myself, well, why is he swinging after a sandstorm? Because I mean, at that point, that's all it looks like. It's just a big gust of sand that kind of blew in and left. I mean, frankly, it looked like it could have been like a swarm of bugs or something.
Yeah.
But then Spider-Man chases after it. And I'm thinking, what are you going to do to stop a big cloud of sand? And then, but then he turns into the Sandman and he actually does something criminal, so they have the fight. But what cracks me up that is at the end, when after the Venom fight, Sandman just shows up and he's like, I didn't want this to happen. I'm a good man and I have a daughter and I didn't mean for it and I don't expect you to forgive me. And they kind of have this like, and I'll talk more about this later too, and I touched on it before, but after Peter Parker says, I forgive you, he just wisps away like this little cloud, this little wisp of dust, gentle mist into the wind. And I was like, that was so corny. Like now suddenly instead of a sandstorm, he's this little gentle mist. and I kind of felt like, and that's not exactly a resolution, because I mean, you just let him go. You know, he's still a criminal, and he's still going to go and steal stuff because he just said he's got a daughter and whatever. So it's, I don't know.
Just that scene really annoyed me. I mean, he forgives the guy that basically put MJ in danger, you know, got his friend killed, nearly killed Peter, for sure killed his uncle, and oh, it's okay, Mr. Criminal, that could take yourself into different things. You go ahead and become part of the breeze for now. Go on. You're done here.
Seriously, I mean, it's fine. It's funny how, you know, we were just saying last week, you were saying how, you know, why do the villains always have to die in these movies? Well, here's a time where it didn't, and is it better? I don't know.
No, definitely not better. But I just, but there should have been a better resolution. First of all, linking the Sandman to the murder of his uncle, terrible.
So dumb. Why would you do that? Why?
Not, 3 years. The movie takes place 3 years from the time, or 3 or 4 years from the time that he gets turned into Spider-Man. All right, and in all that time, the police never thought to say, "Oh, by the way, we have another person of interest in your uncle's death." Sorry.
Yeah, you know, and I watched every time I see that, I say to myself, what, like, first of all, if you have the one guy and you assume that he's the killer, what could have possibly, and of course they never mention it because it wouldn't, I don't think it stands to any reason.
Well, they actually
what
do.
Possible
they say that Marco had a in-jail confession, that he made an in-jail confession about it.
Oh, is that right? I didn't catch that part.
Yeah, it was extremely brief, but it still made no sense. He's like, okay, he made an in-jail confession about it, so he's not moved into solitary until they can investigate this further? No, he's just allowed to escape? I mean, come on.
Right, yeah. No, it doesn't make any... I mean, story-wise, yeah, why would you retcon that and make him the killer? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, remember when I said last time about how these films they work really hard to sort of show the villains as sympathetic? They really take it up a notch with this one, because again, now he's full blown the killer of, and you can even tell. So I frankly, this is where they don't hit me over the head with these messages. Don't lecture me about this. They show when Peter first hears that this guy killed him, and again, he never did this in the first one.
Right.
He starts having these visions, these flashes of this guy with the sneer, boom, shooting Uncle Ben in cold blood. He doesn't care. He's heartless and cold or whatever.
Crime scene number one.
Then later, right, there you go. Then later, after the conversation, it was an accident. He bumped into me with the gun, and he felt rotten about it, and he didn't even get into the car. He felt so bad about it. I'm like, all right, so I get it. So every criminal has real reasons, and they're real people, and everybody makes mistakes, and let's not get angry, and let's not everything is black and white, and not, it's like, ugh, just shut up. Just, seriously, oh my God.
Whoa, Spidey, love the new outfit. Remember Ben Parker?
What does it matter to you anyway?
Everything.
Here's a question. Gwen Stacy. Was Gwen Stacy a model in the comics?
No.
That was for nothing, right? That was kind of just thrown in there.
That was just to have another action sequence, which annoyed the ever living heart of me.
Well, I don't mind having an action sequence. You're trying to jam too much into this film, and that's why none of the individual elements get time to simmer, so nothing really works. It's this kind of like potpourri of stuff, and it's.
And then we go here, and then we go there, and then we do this.
Yeah, too many ingredients in this stew, so nothing really makes sense.
Yeah,
so she gets a raw deal. Captain Stacy gets kind of a raw deal. Again, too much stuff. You're bouncing around. You're here, you're there. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention before we do our stuff.
Well, we can't really possibly harp on MJ and Harry as much because we've been basically beating the crap out of them the past weeks. But MJ had to just speak up. I got fired, and that would have probably changed a lot of Pete's attitude about it. But instead, she goes to Harry, and she cheats on him with Harry. And Harry.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like I don't forgive either of them for that little indiscretion. But at least Harry has the excuse of he had amnesia, which, let's not even get into that frickin' trope. But he had amnesia, and he wasn't 100% sure, because even he had to be reminded, my dad's dead, isn't he? So that amnesia could have taken him to when they were still dating, or at least shortly after the breakup. So I could have almost forgiven Harry for his slip, still not forgiving him, but she had no excuse.
Yeah, you're right. Again, and seriously, what is it? So just like 1 or 2 disagreements, and now you're calling Harry and going over there and kissing on him? That doesn't... Again, she's never been painted very well in these films,
No.
and this didn't help.
No, this to me was the nail in the coffin of her character. It's like the MJ from the comic books. She's not here. She was never here.
No, I agree with that. And even the part when he I know you said we shouldn't even bother, but yeah, when they did the amnesia thing, I said to myself, when I first saw this, I'm like, no way, you are not going to do amnesia to get... And I didn't even understand it, because again, it was the worst trope to dig up, and I thought when they did it, it was basically to kind of just push his character aside, because they realized they got too many things going on. Mm-hmm. So look, you got amnesia, so you go over here for a while, we'll focus on the other villains.
Yeah.
But then when he gets his memory back, right after MJ leaves the house, by the way, then I was like, well, then why'd you bother with that in the first place? Why did you bother with that amnesia stuff? I mean, you could have just had Harry in the hospital that whole time if you needed to just sort of get him out of the movie for a little while other stuff happened, or something.
Put him in a damn coma.
And there you go. I mean, he had a coma. I mean, even that's a trope, but I mean, I'll take that over amnesia.
Yeah.
I mean, that made no sense whatsoever. It really didn't make any sense.
Yeah, because you put him in a coma, and he's like, the bomb being set in Act 1, and that's fine. But you put him in amnesia, and now it's like, it's even worse. Because at least a coma is something that's like easily explained, and considering the shot he took in that fight, I'd believe him if he was in a coma. It's like, okay, he nearly had his head decapitated, and he hit his freaking head on the ground when he fell to the ground. Fine, he's in a coma.
Right.
I can deal with that. But missteps.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really, really odd choice. I really can't understand why they did that. That was so damn corny. But then after that, when I guess he forces Mary Jane to dump Peter and to say that there's someone else so that he could sort of rub salt in the wound, saying, yeah, I'm the other guy. Mary Jane understands that she's dating Spider-Man, right? Why does she think that Harry's more powerful than Spider-Man all of a sudden? I mean, he grabs her by the throat, lifts her up, yada, yada, yada. But even still, I think she would be thinking, my boyfriend's going to kick your ass. But no, she goes and lies to Peter about this, that, and the other. Yeah, you're absolutely right when you said Three's Company episodes, because, yeah, it really does. It relies so much on misunderstanding and coincidence. Like, even the part about, when Peter goes to the church to take the costume off,
right,
and Brock just happens to be going to church to pray to kill Peter Parker. Again, another really super duper corny thing. Just happens to be right underneath where Peter Parker's taking the suit off. I would think that just mediocre writing could put these two together for some reason. Why Eddie Brock goes to church to pray in the only church in Manhattan. There's only one church in Manhattan where these two could go at the exact same time.
Well,
talk about ridiculous
coincidence. Pete did tell him earlier, you want redemption, find religion.
Is that really what you're gonna give me for?
Dude, I'm just telling you how probably they looked at it. Look, let's just rate this thing. Do our little side thing. We need to put a bullet in this because it's obvious our feelings about this.
Yeah, I agree.
I gave it a 3 out of 10, and I still feel generous giving it a 3. There's a lot technically going very well in this movie, which I will always appreciate. Everything else is a disaster as far as I'm concerned. Honestly, you want to hear what my 3 is? It gets 1 point for Bruce Campbell, 1 point for J.K. Simmons, 1 point for Betty Brant, for Elizabeth Banks. There it is. There's your 3 points.
I'll probably be slightly more generous and give it a 4. Oh. I felt like I liked it. I saw a few good things this time around when I watched it that I didn't notice before. So I'll give it that. I mean, again, my 1 to 10, above a 5 is, yeah, you should see it. Below a 5 is no, don't. I find it to be watchable, at least. I mean, there are things going on. There's some relatively good effects, relatively good action. Story doesn't make sense. Character motivations don't make sense. Way too much convenience and that god-awful jazz, emo crap. So bad. I'll stick with a 4 just to be nice. I mean, and I kind of feel like I'll even say this, maybe just only because Sam Raimi deserves the benefit of the doubt. I'll just put it that way. He had given us 2 good films up until this point, and I still have something to say about that later, so go ahead. For your consideration, needless to say, nothing about this film really stands out as a home run. The only thing I will give it credit for that I think deserves some note is that Sam Raimi did manage to give us a pretty consistent trilogy. The cast stays the same. The characters stay the same. You don't see any wild changes in character. The sets are the same. The look of the costume stays the same. Is it on par with the Dark Knight trilogy or the original Bourne trilogy that I think, really stays consistent and gives us a good 3-part story? Not to that level, but I do feel that this is kind of a decent 3-part story. And I just like that the same characters are there, the same supporting characters are there. The feel more or less stays the same. And even the things that are bad in Spider-Man 3 were probably hinted at even earlier. I find that some of the weirdness of, like I mentioned, like the bad music in Spider-Man 3, well, there was bad music in Spider-Man 2. And I feel like that was sort of hinted at. So I will give him that. I think that there is a sense of consistency. And had the Venom character not been pushed on him, we might have had something better and a little more recognizable as a good 3-part story. So that's the best I can come up with for this one.
I said Bruce Campbell.
There you go.
J.K. Simmons is, as far as I'm concerned, he makes it out of this trilogy unscathed, and he will always be perfect in my eyes.
Agreed.
And I just felt like seeing him do, like, the thing that amused me most about Bruce Campbell is he's doing the French waiter thing, and he makes a little joke about the and so on and so forth. And then, it's just at one point, he just picks up a whistle, a light whistle, he blows it, a hand just comes off the screen with a pen, he grabs the pen, like, effortlessly, and starts asking, name? Pekka? It's like, I love you. So Bruce Campbell, yeah. I was very happy with him, and
you know what I like about him too is I'll bet you if I sat someone else down who'd never seen these films before and we watched all 3 in a row, I'll bet you they wouldn't even pick up that was the same actor doing all 3 parts.
I know! That's how freaking awesome he is.
He does it just different enough, yeah. I agree with that.
It's very simple. Venom. Venom was a huge misstep in this movie, and not even as a character, a huge misstep in presentation, okay? Here's how I would have done Venom for this movie, and I think it would have worked better, okay? The movie opens up with, the city-loving Spider-Man, and a huge, it opens up with the city-loving Spider-Man. You start the movie with John Jameson returning to Earth with the shuttle being damaged from a meteor hit. Because of the window and everything like that, it turns out that the best chance for the shuttle is landing in, like, Kennedy Airport in New York. So they clear out the runway and stuff like that, and he comes in, but, he's there to take photographs. It comes down, but it comes down hard, and a fire breaks out. He goes in the shuttle. He saves John Jameson, and a part of the meteor jumps on his back as he's escaping from the thing. There's how you introduce Venom, okay? It still leaves a mystery with Venom involved, but it's a much more logical explanation as to how this thing just happened to find Peter, as opposed to, oh, look, a meteor just happened to hit the spot 10 feet where they're having a date, okay? You start there. And you make it that at first the symbiote, he doesn't see the symbiote. Maybe it just kind of stays in the center of his back instead of like completely taking him over just as a start. Okay? You introduce Eddie Brock. Now, here's where you can start the tension. Because the shuttle had a hard landing, he stops taking pictures to run and save them, but Eddie Brock scoops him. And now you've introduced the character of Eddie Brock better as a real rival to Peter. So now you've introduced Venom, you've introduced Eddie Brock in the same scene within the first 10 minutes, and you start off with a pretty good action scene. Now, if you want to go into the story proper, now you have an excuse as to why Peter seems to be unreasonable to MJ. because as the movie's progressing, he's slowly getting a little bit angry. Because that was a problem with me. It's like, why is Peter so narcissistic? He's never been that way before, and he's always been a humble person. And you could argue that, well, success went to his head, but that just never felt right for the character. Now you have the excuse because the symbiote was slowly corrupting his mind, and slowly build up the fact that it's there, and slowly build up that it's changed his perception of everything like that. I mean, and then if you want to stick with Sandman and stuff like that afterwards, there you go. But I think starting the movie with that would have been better. Now, here's the other part of it I would change. The movie doesn't introduce Venom. It ends with he still goes to the church and gets rid of the symbiote. Okay? He still goes to the church and gets rid of the symbiote, and there's the scene, and the thing's gone. Okay? But that's it. That's the last of it. And then he kind of goes away, and, the big final battle of whatever happens. After the movie is over with, and after okay, we're going to see if we can work out, so on and so forth, you flash back to Brock getting the symbiote costume, and the last scene of the movie is him on all fours, and he looks up at the camera and screams, and there's Venom's face, and boom, that's the end of the movie. Yes,
totally. It's funny you say that, because that was always my feeling too, that's how this Spider-Man 3 should have ended, with the last shot of Venom. That shot of him going at the camera, yeah. Remember when I was saying about the first one, how I felt like one of the weaknesses was that it was disjointed, in that they did the origin story sort of in the first half of the film, and then the second half is the next part with the Green Goblin and everything else. I felt like that was the problem with this one too, that you had to do Venom as a two-part story, because the first half of that story is Peter in the black costume with his own thing. The second part of that should have been Venom. Here, the way they did it, it was an afterthought. And again, they should have broken that out into different films. I agree, and I like your take on how to fix it.
It's not the greatest, but I think it certainly would have worked better than what we got. So, how about you?
It's funny. I've heard people say that you should have gotten rid of the Sandman and just do Venom. My feeling was always that Venom was the one that was the afterthought, and I felt like they should have gotten rid of Venom and just did Sandman. And I think what they should have done, like you said, I like your idea of the symbiote coming from by way of a space shuttle. I didn't mind it just landing in the backyard. I thought it was not great, but it was okay. But if you're going to do that, basically I would have gotten rid of Eddie Brock altogether, or had him as a secondary character way in the distance, as this kind of background antagonist. Let the Sandman be the main villain of this one, not have him be that sympathetic that we got to kiss and make up at the end, and he just wisps away into oblivion. No, make him a real bad guy. Give me a real confrontation with him, not another dumb. I'm so sick of Mary Jane tied up on top with. Why? I shouldn't even get off on this tangent. Why was there a truck above her in the car? Remember, they got her in the car, and then there's a truck in a web above her.
Yeah, when that first cinder block fell down, I was like, wait, what? It's like, did he also pull up a truck there? What was that for? Is he just showing off?
I didn't understand that part. That didn't make any sense. So anyway, how would I fix this one? Well, again, get rid of all the jazz stuff. Just have Peter Parker become aggressive, not stupid, and not a jazz fan all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And get rid of Venom. Do the black costume in this one, and the last shot, like you said, is the shot of Venom. I completely agree. That's the way to go with that.
Yep.
Then you could have had a workable something.
Well, so long, Sam Raimi. You know what? You didn't do that terrible. You just kind of didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Again, I go back and forth with this film. Should I cut Sam Raimi a break and just say he was a victim of the studio system? And again, we always see the studios sticking noses in and mucking things up. So I get that part.
But he had enough clout with the first two movies that he should have been able to say, "Look, I will give you Venom, but I want to do it my way, and I want to do it this way. It will give us a great beginning, middle, and end of this movie, and set you up with a sequel that will have people salivating for."
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you saved Venom for the fourth one, that would have been great. I wish they really just stuck with the classic Spider-Man villains and just left Venom. And it's funny, too, because I keep going back, just recently talking about how now that they're doing Infinity Wars and all this other stuff, they could do Venom now in a way that they could never have before, but they're going to muck that up, too. So
this could be the end of Spider-Man.
All right, my friend, I think we have wrapped up another episode, and next week, the one we're all waiting for, Spider-Man Homecoming.
All right, my man. Well, listen, you have a happy 4th of July because we're recording this on July the 3rd.
We'll see you next week.
And good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.